Hi guys, welcome back to Binge Watch Britney. So in today's episode, we are going to be covering A Nearly Normal Family on Netflix. So this is a show that I was really excited to watch because I had seen in the coming soon section that this was going to be released soon, and I actually watched this maybe a month or so ago, and I'm just now getting around to recording my recap on this TV show, and so I'm really excited to be doing this episode finally. This obviously deals with a really tough topic, especially since we're dealing with sexual assault, and one of the things that's really kind of tough about this TV show is when you see that survivors don't get justice. And so as I take you through the season, we'll kind of see how that has impacted these different relationships between the characters involved in the storyline. This was a hard episode to do because the story is kind of told through flashbacks as each episode progresses. And so I'm gonna try and give you my 5 key points true to how the show happened, but I also may fill in some gaps that don't kind of reflect how the story was told. And so it is true to the order of events of how everything played out, minus the flashbacks. So just giving you guys that heads up as we go through this episode. I also want to call out to the fact that this is a dub show, and so I've been watching a bunch of dub shows. They've been dealing more so with detectives trying to solve crimes, and so this one is more from the perspective of the victims who were wronged. And so I was super excited to give this show a shot, and with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. So for our 5 key points, we have, for point number 1, Stella is arrested for murder. So we know through what is revealed in the first episode that Stella was raped as a teen when she was attending camp. We do see her kind of flirting with this older kind of like instructor who's in charge of all of the kids. And we see that at some point she actually wanted to kind of like not move forward, and then obviously the assault happened. And so we really see the family struggling to deal with this after it comes out that she was raped at this camp. We do see her parents having a conversation about how they should handle this, what they should do. We know that her dad is a pastor, her dad Adam is a pastor, and her mother Eureka is a lawyer. And so being that her mom is a lawyer, she has experience dealing with situations like this, and so we really see her pushing and advocating for them to kind of like not move forward with criminal charges against the person who did this because they don't feel like they're going to be able to win the case. And one of the issues was that they didn't have like conclusive evidence that this was an assault, and so we see that this is something that the parents are kind of forced to get on the same page about handling as far as not moving forward. The sad thing was that we did see Stella overhear them having this conversation, so that had to be really tough for her as a child, as a teenager, to know that her parents knew that this awful thing happened to her and they weren't willing to pursue the issue legally because they didn't think that she had a chance to win. They didn't want to deal with the public backlash that would come from all of this being made public. And so we can see here where they are really failing Stella because there's a lot more that they could have done for her. And we do see the parents later on in the season kind of coming back to this as they're dealing with the case that she was arrested for murder. And we're really seeing this come full circle where the dad is really expressing to the mom that they didn't do the right thing for their daughter. And as a result, their own relationship has been tough to navigate, and they've kind of like grown apart as a married couple. We also see that Stella really struggles going forward. We know that she didn't go to college and she's not considered ambitious like her mother. Her mom is really a fan of her friend Amina, who she's known since childhood. The families are really close, and so we see her kind of not necessarily competing with Amina for her mother's affection, but we see that she's kind of being compared to Amina, and she's just not really trying to measure up because of these different struggles that she's going through. And we do see her throughout the course of the season meeting with a therapist to talk about all of it, and we do see that she's just really having to navigate her way forward, knowing that this traumatic thing happened to her and her family didn't handle it the best that they could. We also see that Stella is working in a coffee shop, and she continues being friends with Amina throughout the timeline of all of this happening. Their families are really close, and so we see how this new situation of Stella being arrested for murder has really impacted all of the relationships that they have within the family and also outside of the family. And so just to get more into Stella and kind of like who she was arrested for murdering, we do have Stella meeting this guy, Christopher, who she met at a nightclub. She actually approached him and they kind of just made a fun night of it. They went to a different town, they hung out with different people and that sort of thing. And so it really seemed like it was kind of like this relationship that was gonna open her up and kind of make her happy again. And then as the season progresses, we see that the relationship was not quite how it was initially presented. We also learn that the mother, Eureka, is having an affair with another lawyer. We do see the scene where she kind of lies to her husband, Adam, about having to go to work. She leaves her work badge on the table. So obviously this is a sign that she's not really going to work. And we see her having an affair with this lawyer. And then we also see Adam kind of like dealing with this and kind of realizing that his wife is lying to him and not really knowing what is going on. And we kind of see how this kind of impacts him as far as him being a pastor, because obviously he believes that marriage is a sacred thing. He doesn't want to ruin the family, and so we see him kind of retreating, kind of like into himself and not really willing to confront his wife about what she's doing, because he wants to keep the family that they do have intact, because they've dealt with a lot of stress with everything from Stella's initial sexual assault situation. And going into my second point, so we have Adam and Eureka constantly interfering with the investigation, and obviously Eureka is doing this in more kind of like helpful ways that's kind of like really advancing everything as far as her daughter's case. We have Adam, on the other hand, doing everything foolish that he can, and he's actually hurting the investigation. And so we do see the scene where Adam heard a noise. His daughter wasn't home yet. He went downstairs, saw her showering, saw blood, and then we do see him later on discovering her phone, and he ends up lying to the detectives or the police officers involved with the case about where his daughter was. He lied and said that she was home before a certain time, before midnight, I think, and she actually wasn't. We see him confronting the prosecutor and basically like blaming her for what their family is going through, blaming her for continuing to, I guess, like press charges against Stella for what happened. And then we also see him going to question Christopher's ex-girlfriend to find out more about like what the relationship was, what she knew about him, and kind of like how this ties to Stella, because he's really just trying to find another person to blame but Stella for the murder. And so we see him kind of reacting in these foolish ways. He's trying to help his daughter, but he's also overcompensating for the fact that they didn't take action against the person who violated Stella way before this even happened. And so he's really trying to protect his daughter, but the ways that he's going about it is really foolish. And so we do see kind of later on, he actually confronts the guy who assaulted Stella and he beats him up. And so what happens is the guy ends up realizing, like, you know, who this person is and why he was beaten up, and he doesn't even press charges against Adam for this. And so we really see that Adam is trying to navigate this situation the best that he can, and he's really forced to do this on his own because him and Eureka are not really talking about everything that's happening. She's kind of going off on her own, and she's doing these things to kind of try to get progress in the case. And so we do see that Eureka ends up hiring her lover, Mikhail, who is now her daughter's lawyer and responsible for basically getting Stella off the hook. And so Adam is not aware of this connection yet. He just thinks that this is the best lawyer for the job. And then he does later find out that this is a person that his wife is having an affair with. And so for Eureka's part, what we see is that she knows that Stella has been arrested for murder. She quickly gets Michael involved as the lawyer. She ends up searching Stella's room because she knows that the police officers are coming to execute a warrant and search the house. And so she finds Stella's bloody clothes. She gets rid of them. She's able to walk out of the house with the clothes and the phone, I believe. She's able to walk out just as the police officers are coming to search the home. And it was shocking that not only was she able to leave the house, she was able to go to the police precinct with all of that stuff in her purse. And then we finally see her making her way to her father's nursing home, and she ends up storing this evidence with her father so that nobody can find it. And then we also see other moments where she uses relationships that she has within the, legal system, other lawyers, things like that, to kind of find out more information about the case. And so she ends up using a friend by saying, hey, I want to come and talk to you about something. And then she's talking to this person and she's telling them, Adam did something stupid. I really just want to apologize, stuff like that. But that person is also located in the same office building as the person prosecuting Stella's case. And so she uses the opportunity to have an excuse to be in the building, and then she ends up making her way to that prosecutor's office, and she's able to go through the files, and she learns that Amina's DNA was found in Christopher's apartment, and so she's able to gain information that she otherwise would not have known if she hadn't basically broken the law. And so she's doing the right thing and she's getting the information that she needs, but she's just going about it in a shady way and in a way that basically compromising her integrity as a lawyer. This is really what advanced the story as far as the viewers were concerned, because we weren't really learning this information any other way. And as we learned this information is when we kind of got more flashbacks that kind of developed everything that happened prior to the murder. And for the third point, we have Eureka confronting Amina. And so now Eureka knows that Amina was definitely in Christopher's apartment. I think that they had a prior conversation. Amina had really denied knowing Christopher. And so now that she has this DNA, she's able to confront her, and she is continuing to press Amina on this because she doesn't believe Amina because she has evidence that says otherwise. And so we see this scene where the Amina's family, the Bessics, and Eureka and Adam are having dinner or something like that. And Eureka uses this opportunity to search Amina's room and her laptop. And she's really just trying to figure out all the information that she can about how Amina is connected to this case. And we see the Bessic parents say, catch Eureka doing this, because I think Adam approached or confronted Eureka first because he saw her kind of going opposite of the bathroom, which is, she told the Bessic family, hey, I need to use the bathroom, and then she kind of went in a different direction. So Adam knew that she was up to something. He confronts her, and then the Bessic parents come in, and we see them kind of getting into it, and the Bessics basically say, Stella has issues, she's a wild child, that sort of thing. We really see the fraction of that relationship because I think prior to that, they probably had never really said anything bad about Stella to her parent. And then now that this murder investigation has happened and Eureka's questioning Amina's involvement and things like that, you're really seeing the strengthening of that relationship between the two sets of parents. I also, I can't quite remember where this happens in the timeline, but we do see that Amina ends up going to Eureka to have a conversation with her about what she knows, that sort of thing. And Eureka ends up finding out about the murder weapon. She goes and gets it from where they stored it, and then she actually takes it to the nursing home, washes it, and puts it with the other knives in the nursing home. And so you're really seeing how much Eureka is doing to kind of clean up the evidence that would implicate her daughter in the murder of Christopher. And going into the fourth point, we have Christopher's ex-girlfriend Linda trying to warn Stella. We know that Christopher has probably said bad things about his ex Linda to Stella and kind of triangulated them and made them made Stella not willing to trust Linda because she's already painted her as this crazy person who's jealous, who wants him back, that sort of thing. So we see Linda going to the coffee shop where Stella works, and she's really trying to talk to her. We know that Stella knows who Linda is, and she's not willing to talk to her. And so Linda's kind of forced to go off on her own. But then we see Linda coming to Stella's house. She's adamant that she wants to talk to Stella, and she's kind of telling her, hey, he's abusive. I'm sure you've noticed things already, that sort of thing. And we do see that Stella is noticing that he blows up her phone when he can't get in touch with her. We do see this other scene where he's trying to get in touch with her. She answered, and then he takes her to the spot of land that he's purchased. He wants to build a house. He wants her to move in, and she's on the fence with it. And she's talking about her relationship with Amina, and you see that he's getting threatened by her relationship with Amina. And this is kind of the key thing that leads to his murder, which I'm not going to talk about just yet. But the big thing that Linda tells Stella is that she needs to go through a specific drawer in Christopher's house, and in that drawer is going to be the answer to everything that explains why Christopher is dangerous and that Stella is in trouble and she needs to get away from him. And so Stella ends up searching that drawer when she's over at his house, and she finds all of these pill bottles, these prescription drugs that he basically should not have. And so obviously the implication there is that he's drugging women and taking advantage of them. This leads us into the fifth key point. Amina reveals that she was raped too. And so we have, throughout the course of the season, we have Stella's kind of trial taking place. We learn a little bit more in each trial hearing as the season progresses. We had her dad taking the stand, Adam lied on the stand, and I think we had a few other people taking the stand as well that I can't recall, but Amina was really the key witness who took the stand, and she talked about how she was drugged and raped by Christopher. And she also talked about how she didn't really come forward with this because the same thing basically happened to Stella and nothing was done about it. And the reason why nothing was done was because Stella didn't want to be blamed and she didn't want to be bashed publicly for the fact that this happened to her. And so what we do see is, I think there's a flashback and we see that conversation that Eureka was having with Amina, and she's basically telling her everything that happened. And so and at that time, Amina wanted to go to the police with what she knew, but Eureka was able to convince her to hold off on sharing her story until the last minute. And the reason why this was done was because at that time, the prosecution was really focused on getting Stella for the crime. And if they're ambushed at the last minute with this alternate theory of what happened, they don't really have any way to dispute it. They can't change their approach to go after two people when they've really just been focusing on one person. And so because Amina comes forward with this information last minute, the prosecution basically has no choice but to drop the case against Stella because they're not sure now who committed the crime. And so what happens is Amina talks about how her and Stella were supposed to meet up, and Christopher knew this, and we saw this in that conversation where Christopher took Stella to that plot of land that he had purchased, and you see him getting threatened by the relationship. And so we see that I think Stella's working and she's late to meet Amina. She can't find her. And so from Amina's perspective, what happened was Christopher approached her at the bar, tried to hit on her, said that he wanted her first, but he settled for Stella, that sort of thing. But she rejected him because the sense that we get is that she never liked him. And so he gets angered by this rejection. He tries to make amends and offers to buy her a drink, and we know that he has actually drugged the drink that she is now consuming. And so we see her reacting to this. She's out of it. She's not in any shape to take care of herself. She still tries to walk home, and we see her stumbling on the sidewalk, and then he approaches her in his car, offers her a ride home, and then we kind of shift to Stella kind of looking for Amina. Her phone has died or something like that. She tries to take another girl's phone. That girl won't let her use her phone. And then she ends up going to Christopher's building. We see her trying to get in. We see her like looking up at his windows into his apartment. We see this old guy who played a huge role earlier in the season. He could basically place Stella at the scene of a crime, and he said that she was angry, that sort of thing. And so we see that interaction happening where he's seeing her outside the building. Stella is able to get into the building and go to his apartment door, but I think there's like loud music or something like that, and so nobody answers. And so she has to basically crawl outside the window, go like on the roof and that sort of thing, land on his balcony and get inside that way. And so she's able to get inside, and she sees him and Amina on the couch. She sees that Amina's is clearly being taken advantage of, and she is able to hit Christopher over the head with something, grab Amina, they run out, they knock over a vase, and then he is actually chasing after them with a knife. And we see him, I don't think he's drunk, but he's obviously still like impacted from the way that she hit him. He's kind of stumbling all over the place, and then we see him fall. He drops the knife. She realizes, hey, the knife is loose, whatever, and she goes back. She picks it up and she stabs him. And I think that this was something that she did because, one, he was chasing after them really aggressively, like he was not going to stop. The only reason why they were safe, quote unquote, is because he had fallen, and that had given them a chance to kind of slip away and escape, but he still would have definitely like hunted them down and been harassing them, that sort of thing. And so Stella did the right thing kind of in picking up the knife and kind of like stabbing him and all of that, but we see that this is what gets her hit with those murder charges. And so I just want to take it back to that old man that we talked about just briefly a little while ago. He was the one who talked about how awful the screams were that Christopher made, and he really painted him as this victim who was wronged by this jealous girlfriend or whatever, and we see that that's actually not the case. The girls were like really in fear for their lives. They were being chased by this monster, and so seeing it being played out, how everything happened, really made it hit home how dangerous and how like misled everyone was when it came to Christopher, because they didn't realize how much of a monster he was and how harmful he was to the women around him. And I do want to make it clear that the only reason why Stella knew that Amina was in trouble was because of the information that Linda gave her. And so I don't know if she picked up on the fact that I do want to take it back to one thing that kind of made her connect Christopher and Amina. There may have been another time that he had given her a ride home or something like that. And Amina had texted Stella saying, hey, I want you to know I love you, nothing happened. And so I think she kind of understood that maybe Christopher was kind of stepping over the line as far as how he was interacting with her friend. And then we do see that when Stella was looking for Amina had texted her, but she spelled the word wrong, or she spelled it differently, and so Stella knew that it wasn't Amina who sent the text, and she realized that she was in trouble, and so she obviously made that beeline to Christopher's place and was able to save her, and then the murder happened. And then as a result of Amina coming forward with this information, Stella is basically off the hook, and that's where the season ends. So to go ahead and wrap up this episode, this was a really intense show to watch just because of the nature of them talking about sexual assault and then seeing how graphic it was and how it played out, and just seeing how all of these different relationships were impacted. The fact that you have these two best friends who both were sexually assaulted in completely different situations, and how that led to everything happening as far as the murder, and just how broken the system was that this person, Christopher, was able to continue assaulting women. I think that his ex, Linda, had come forward and said that he was abusive, but nothing really came of it. And so the fact that they had to hide evidence, they had to withhold the truth until the last minute, and that was really the only way to get justice for Stella and Amina, was really crazy. I'm actually really glad that Stella got off, because even though she did technically murder someone, I don't think she deserved to be in jail for that. And so with everything being presented as you didn't really know who killed him, obviously with how they showed what happened, we know that Stella was the one who killed him, and we see her kind of going into this church and kind of like leaving something on the altar or something like that, and we know that she has gotten away with murder, but it's not murder in the sense that she did this horrible thing. She really was acting in self-defense because Christopher was such a dangerous person. And I also want to point out the irony of them only being able to get justice because the mom was a lawyer. She knew how the legal system operated, and she was able to use her position as a lawyer to get justice for her daughter in the sense that she was not charged with murder. And we saw that she really didn't know how to do that at the beginning of the season with that first situation that her daughter went through. And so I'm glad that she was, even though it was wrong of her to do that, I'm glad that she knew to get rid of the evidence, that she knew to wait until the last minute to bring out the truth, because as they shown throughout the season, they really did not react in the best way to that initial situation, and everything that happened to Stella afterwards was a result of that. And we see her talking about how this affected her in her therapy sessions, the therapist really trying to get all of this out of her, and just knowing that she was able to kind of get justice in the situation for her friend and also for herself, because she would have been stuck in a terrible relationship with that guy if Linda hadn't warned her. And so I thought it was really impactful that we got to see kind of the family go through the situation, deal with it in their individual ways, and then kind of come together. And even though the family is still broken, I think that they are better people for having survived and navigated this situation in a better way than they did the first time. Obviously, the parents, I think, are divorcing at this point because Adam did confront her over the affair that she was having and how they did the wrong thing for Stella. And you have them kind of like going their separate ways. You have Amina and Stella kind of closer than ever because they share this unique and crazy experience that they survived. And yeah, this was actually a really, really great show to watch. I'm really glad that I watched it. I would be interested in seeing season 2. I don't know what season 2 would be about, but I am invested in this family, in these characters. And so yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the recap of A Nearly Normal Family. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.